The Ottoman Empire, an empire whose name echoed through time. It was a really, really big country, did you know? For hundreds of years, it stretched from one continent to another. You know how they say, from the gates of Vienna all the way to the huge deserts of Arabia, from the coasts of North Africa. Just think about how many places its shadow reached. This empire, you see, was set up a long time ago. It grew strong and big, just like a giant strong tree. It sent its roots deep, deep into history. The sultans ruled the country with such grand titles. If you could only see their palaces, they were filled with beauty that would blow your mind. Art, science, all of it came alive there. It stood strong for a full 600 years. It showed everyone what power and time really meant. So many different kinds of people lived within its borders. Turks, Arabs, Greeks, Armenians, Jews, Slavs in the Balkans. So many different people, so many different languages, all together. Each one added its own special flavor to this rich mix. Mosques, churches, and synagogues all stood side by side, shoulder to shoulder. The laws also tried to hold all this variety together. Imagine a world that was super busy, full of life, and always moving. But empires, just like people, get old with time, The world around it was also changing all the time. New, strong countries started popping up in the West, and the Ottoman Empire's power slowly started to fade. Wars were lost, lands got smaller. They even started calling it the sick man of Europe. Then that big war started, and that huge empire took its last breath. But what if it hadn't? What if the Ottoman Empire had managed to stay standing after World War I? What would the world be like then? Now let's think about a totally different path. What if that huge empire hadn't fallen apart? What do you think would have happened? What if it had somehow changed and managed to survive? Maybe a smart sultan would have made such big changes that maybe those new ideas would have worked out just perfectly. Or maybe they would have won some really important wars, who knows? Sometimes, even a tiny little moment can change all of history. A different choice could mean a whole different world. Just think how different the 1900s would have been then. Maybe those big wars would have been completely different. Or maybe they wouldn't have happened at all. You know the map of the Middle East we have now, the one that always seems so mixed up. Well, that map would have been drawn with completely different lines. The countries that were born from its downfall, maybe they'd still be cities in the Ottoman Empire. It would be a world that's hard for us to even imagine today. Just think about it, those big balances of power in the world, the Cold War, the rise of the big superpowers. I wonder, would the Ottoman Empire have had a place in a world like that? Maybe it would have been a third power, like a bridge between the East and the West, a power that kept the balance between the East and the West. Its voice would sound like it came from long, long ago, but also be brand new. It would speak for all the different kinds of people living inside it. People around the world would listen more to what it had to say. Just thinking about it is like a dream, isn't it? It's like something straight out of an old forgotten fairy tale book. But wondering what if things had been different is just something we humans do. Thinking this way helps us understand our own world a little better. Gap 2S. It's like it helps us look at things with fresh eyes and ask new questions. How did we end up where we are today, I wonder? Could everything have been totally different? So, let's take a little walk down this imaginary road. If the empire was still around, its language would be totally different too. Ottoman Turkish, that rich language. It had lots of words from Arabic and Persian. Maybe it would be a language spoken all over the world, just like English, French, or Spanish. It would even be taught in schools far, far away from Istanbul, and it would be written with those beautiful Arabic letters. We'd see it on TV, in books, everywhere. Art would have signs of the old days, like calligraphy. That would still be a really important tradition. It wouldn't just be on mosque walls, but on modern things and designs too. Miniature art would tell brand new stories too, with all those tiny details and bright colours. It would inspire new artists, those cool shapes and flower designs. They'd be designed onto fabrics, and they would change how people everywhere thought about beauty. Just think, art schools in Edirne, Cairo, Baghdad, Sarajevo, all in Ottoman lands. In these schools, people would talk about what Ottoman art means today. Some people would stick to the old ways. They'd try to make the old masters work even better. And others would want to try new things. They'd mix old and new to make amazing stuff. The art world would be super lively and always changing. Even music would sound totally different. Those beautiful melodies, those cool beats. Not just at special concerts, but in songs we hear every day on the radio. You'd hear the oud, ney and quanun. Even young people would know the sounds of these instruments really well. It wouldn't be an old thing, but a tradition that's alive and kicking. It would change the music that millions of people listen to. Istanbul, the very heart of the empire. It would be even more beautiful, more amazing than it is now. Maybe it would be the capital of the whole world, who knows? The historical peninsula, it would be protected like the apple of their eye. Hagia Sophia, the Blue Mosque, Topkapi Palace. They would all sparkle bright under the Anatolian sun, but at the same time brand new neighborhoods would be built. Skyscrapers would be built in the Ottoman style. Minarets would reach for the sky, and next to them there would be shiny modern buildings made of glass and steel. There would be even more bridges over the Bosphorus. Just like always, they would connect the continents. The sounds of the call to prayer would mix with the busy sounds of the modern city. It would show how beautifully the old and new came together, like proof that it would always be there. Our daily lives would be different too. Maybe family ties would be even stronger. Respect for elders would be one of the most important things. Our old customs and traditions would live on longer. Of course, there would still be smartphones and the internet, but coffee houses would still be packed with people having nice chats. People there would talk about politics, poetry and life. It would be a way of life special to this empire. Society would be like a mosaic with lots of different colors in it. You know that old millet system? Maybe a changed version of it would continue. People from different religions could manage their own community affairs up to a point. Of course, there might be some problems with fairness between different groups and different areas. The Sultan, or the modern government at the time, would always have to deal with these kinds of problems. Chapter 5. How would the gold flow? If the old trade routes came back to life. Back in the day, the empire controlled some really big trade routes, right? Even the Silk Road passed through its lands. Spices from the east, goods from the west, all of it spread to the world from Ottoman ports. If it had survived in a world with ships and trains, this control would have been super important, even later on in the time of airplanes and the internet. These old routes would still be very valuable, so how would industrialization have happened, I wonder? Maybe it would have been slower, with each area developing on its own. Or just the opposite, the sultans would have really gotten into it, building factories, train tracks and telegraph lines. The empire had so many riches: oil from Mesopotamia, minerals from Anatolia, cotton from Egypt, timber from the Balkans. All of this would have made the Ottoman industry incredibly strong. Of course, managing all this wealth would have been both very hard and a big chance. Would this wealth have been shared with everyone, or would it have gathered in just a few places? Would every place have grown equally, or would some places have been left behind? For example, Kirkuk, places like Basra where they found oil, would have become very strong money-wise, but still, inside that big empire, their future would have depended a bit on what the Sultan decided to do. The Istanbul and Çanakkale Straits, with these very important waterways under the Ottoman flag, the empire would have had a great card to play. In world trade, with ships coming and going, it would have controlled the way between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean Sea. Other countries would have either tried to get along with it, or maybe they would have been mad at it, or they would have tried to stand up to it. So it would have been a big source of power and also sometimes a reason for problems. Chapter 6. What would an imperial treasury connected to the whole world be like? Just think about it, an Ottoman economic union, a huge market with lots of different people in it. It would have its own money, maybe akshe or lira. Strong, solid money backed by rich resources, huge Ottoman banks with branches all over the world, Ottoman companies doing business all over the world, selling oil, selling fabric, making technologies. It would be an important player whose voice is heard on the world stage. It would also have relationships with other big economic powers. With the European Union, America, China, Japan, India, it would make trade deals and form partnerships. Sometimes it would compete with them, and sometimes it would work together with them. The economic decisions it made would be watched carefully by the whole world. The markets in London, New York and Tokyo would follow it. The decisions it made would affect the whole world. Of course, there would be some problems within its own borders too. Probably not everywhere would develop in the same way. While some places got very rich, others might fall a bit behind. Very busy cities and quiet villages would exist together. There would be poverty and wealth side by side. The way it was ruled, whether it was by a sultan or a republic, and it would try to find a balance to move forward. Helping all its people live better lives would be a never-ending job. The empire's view on world money and the economy, maybe it would be shaped by its own traditions. Maybe honest, fair money matters would be more important. Or the ways it handled money would be different. Those big charity groups, the foundations, they could do important work to help people live better. They would even help the country grow its economy. So there would be modern money rules and old good customs would continue too. Chapter 7. The Sultan's Move, a new big player on the world stage. Just imagine an Ottoman Empire in the year 2025. It would be one of the biggest powers in the world. Not just a power that affects the countries nearby, but one that everyone around the world would listen to. Maybe it would even have a permanent seat, like on the United Nations Security Council. Its diplomats would be really good at that old skill of running a country. They'd know how to sort things out in this messy world we live in today because they'd understand the past really well, and they'd always think about the future when they made decisions. They'd have a huge impact, especially in the Middle East for sure, and in the Balkans and North Africa. They might even have a say in some parts of Asia. Maybe it would be a power that calms things down and helps bring peace, or it could be the other way around. It might even cause new problems. It would look out for some countries, but it would also compete with others. Just by being there, it would change old friendships and who the enemies were. The way power is balanced in the world would be totally different. It wouldn't just be the West is like this and the East is like that anymore, or those simple ideas like the North is rich and the South is poor wouldn't really fit. The Ottomans would have their own area of influence, their own special part of the world. They'd have their own goals and their own plans. It could help balance out the power of America and against what China wants, or the unity of Europe. The world would have more big players, meaning it might be more complicated, but maybe also more balanced. What went on inside its own government would be super interesting too. You'd have to wonder, how would a sultan rule a country in today's world? Maybe the sultan would be more like a king who's a symbol with a strong group of people chosen by everyone else to help run things. Or it could be more old-fashioned, where one person makes all the big decisions. But if that happened, people would probably want more say in things, more freedom. There'd always be a bit of a tug of war inside the palace, between people who liked the old ways and people who wanted new ideas. Chapter 8. Making a new world by talking things out. Friendships and enemies on the world map would be totally different. Who do you think the empire's friends would be? And what about its enemies? Maybe it would be super close with some Muslim countries. They might team up because they had a shared history. Or maybe it wouldn't care about religion or where countries were from. It would just make deals with other countries based on what was best for it, with everyone, no matter how far away or what they believed. Dealing with other countries would be a real balancing act. They'd have to be super careful. How the empire saw wars and arguments around the world, but it would be shaped by learning from its own long history. For hundreds of years, it ruled over so many different kinds of people. It solved arguments, fought wars. With all that experience, it could come up with totally different ways to fix things. Like letting countries make their own choices and not messing with other countries' business. Things like rights for smaller groups of people and freedom to practice their religion. Its diplomats would be known for being patient and really good at figuring things out. How countries got along with each other would be more interesting, but maybe it would be harder to guess what would happen next. Everyone would always be wondering, what's the Ottoman Empire going to do next? Like, what do they want? How strong are they? Are they doing okay? People in big cities all over the world would talk about it and try to figure it out. Spies would be working day and night to find out what was going on in Istanbul. They'd try to figure out what was happening in Istanbul, what the Sultan said last. This make-believe empire would also have to deal with today's problems. Things like terrorism, climate change, and big sicknesses. Just like all the countries today, it would have to work together. with other countries to protect its borders, its people, and its future. Both its old wisdom and its power today would be tested by these new problems. As a big player on the world stage, it would share in the world's problems too. Chapter 9. Seeing the world in a whole new light. So what if the Ottoman Empire had never fallen apart? The world would for sure be a very different place. And it wouldn't just be the maps and flags that changed. The flow of history would have been changed in a much bigger way. Different cultures would have mixed together in totally new ways. New thoughts and ideas would have spread in very different ways. The big picture of all people would have become richer and more colorful. It would have had the Ottoman Empire's gold and silk threads woven in. The way power was balanced in the world would be different. Maybe there wouldn't be just one super strong country. Instead, great cultures would be side by side. Each one would have things they were good at and things they weren't so good at. Each one would bring its own special kinds of beauty to the world. The way they talked and got along with each other would be more varied. Maybe it would be harder to agree on things, but in the end, even better things could happen. The world would have a totally different way of talking about things. So, would a world like that be better, or would it be worse? It's impossible to know for sure. Maybe some of the worries we have today wouldn't be there, but I'm sure completely new problems would have popped up. In history, there's no, if only this happened, then everything would be perfect. There are just different paths and different endings. People are always the same, really, always trying hard, always hoping for good things, and sometimes not getting along. Imagining if the Ottoman Empire had continued, it actually helps us understand our own lives today much better. The choices made back then, the roads not taken. We see more clearly the big things that made our world what it is today. This reminds us that nothing is set in stone, that anything is possible. History is really a story that we are still writing today. And the past, even if it's a past we just imagine, it can show us what might happen in the future. But what do you think? Could a modern Ottoman Empire have made the world better or worse? Share your thoughts in the comments. We're reading every one. Thank you for watching.